The first time my father backhanded me, I was 12 years old. The sting was sharp and immediate, a brand of shame that felt hotter than the pain. A single, typed line on a report card had been the catalyst. A B plus in advanced mathematics. Vances do not get B's, Elena, he had hissed, his breath a cloud of expensive scotch and contempt. We are not mediocre. We are not average. We are apex predators. Act like one. I remember the way the cut on the inside of my cheek tasted, metallic and coppery. I remember the way my mother had turned away from the doorway, a silent, weeping ghost. Most of all, I remember the look in his cold, gray eyes. It wasn't rage. It was disappointment, as if I were a flawed product rolling off an assembly line. The last time he hit me, I was 22. It was the night I finally found the courage to tell him I was leaving. Leaving the stifling Fifth Avenue penthouse, leaving New York, leaving the gilded cage of being the heir apparent to Vance Properties, his monstrously successful real estate empire. I had been accepted into a graduate program in astrophysics at the University of New Mexico. "You ungrateful little bitch," he had snarled, his voice dangerously low. The controlled facade of the billionaire businessman had evaporated, leaving behind something raw and ugly. "After everything I've built for you, the legacy, you would spit on it? You would throw it all away for stars?" He didn't use his hand this time. He was too refined for that. He picked up the heavy, lead crystal decanter from his mahogany desk, a family heirloom. The world exploded in a kaleidoscope of shattering glass and blinding, white-hot agony. The last thing I remember before the darkness swallowed me whole was the look in his eyes. Not rage, not even hatred. It was a cold, clean calculation. I was a problem, a glitch in the system, and he was fixing it. I woke up in a private, sterile white hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and money. My head was swathed in bandages, throbbing with a rhythm that matched the beeping of the heart monitor. A man was sitting in the chair beside my bed. He was sleek, soulless, dressed in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. "Mr. Sterling, my father's personal fixer." "Miss Vance," he said, his voice a monotone, devoid of any human warmth. "You took a rather unfortunate fall down the stairs at the penthouse. A tragic accident. The concussion was quite severe. It has caused some confusion. You've been having rather vivid delusions about wanting to leave your family and your responsibilities." He leaned forward, his eyes like polished black stones. "Your father, in his infinite concern, has arranged for you to convalesce at the Willow Creek Wellness Center, for your own good, of course." The Willow Creek Wellness Center. I knew of it. A discreet, horrifically expensive facility where the wealthy stashed their inconvenient relatives, alcoholics, pill poppers, rebellious children. They were going to lock me away, declare me mentally unstable, a danger to myself. My own father was going to have me institutionalized to keep me in line. In that sterile white room, with the ghost of my dreams dying a silent death, something inside me shattered and then reformed harder and sharper than before. The pain, the betrayal, the sheer unadulterated fury all crystallized into a single diamond-hard point of purpose. Elena Vance, the dutiful daughter, the aspiring astrophysicist, died in that bed. And someone else was born. Someone quiet and patient, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that the only way to destroy a predator was to become a better one. I played their game. I was the confused, repentant daughter. I wept prettily and agreed that astrophysics was a silly, childish fantasy. I thanked my father for his boundless concern. I spent 6 months at Willow Creek,
A gilded prison where I was doped on tranquilizers and subjected to daily therapy designed to mold me back into the perfect, pliable heiress. I nodded, I agreed, I recited their scripts. But inside, in the deepest, most hidden part of my mind, I was sharpening myself into a weapon. I was studying my enemy. My father's greatest weakness was his arrogance. He believed he had broken me. He believed he had won. On my 23rd birthday, as a reward for my progress, he gifted me a junior executive position at Vance Properties. It was a symbolic role, a gilded cage with a panoramic view of the city he owned, a place to keep me visible, docile, and under his thumb. I took it. I became the ghost in his machine.
My office was a glass box, a fishbowl designed for observation. My title, Director of Special Projects, was meaningless. My duties consisted of fetching coffee, organizing my father's travel itineraries, and proofreading press releases. I was quiet, efficient, and utterly forgettable. I perfected the art of being a non-entity. I smiled blankly at my older brother, Derek, who strutted through the halls of Vance Properties as the crown prince, his arrogance a birthright. He was a carbon copy of our father, dripping with the same condescending charm, the same belief in his own divine right to rule. He patted me on the head, both literally and figuratively, and called me kiddo. He never saw me as a threat. No one did. And that was my superpower. I began to listen, not just to words, but to silences, to the nervous glances between executives after a closed-door meeting, to the way my father's secretary would hurriedly minimize a screen when I entered her office. I used my forgettable status to my advantage. People said things around me they would never dare say in a boardroom. I was part of the furniture. My father had built his empire on two pillars: relentless ambition and systemic corruption. I made it my mission to learn the blueprint of the second pillar. During late nights, when the office was empty, I would slip into the IT server room. My father, in his arrogance, had a single master password for all his encrypted files: the longitude and latitude coordinates of the first piece of land he ever bought. I'd heard him boast about it at a dinner party. His sentimentality was a fatal flaw. The digital vaults of Vance Properties opened to me. I discovered the shell companies in the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas, intricate webs designed to launder money and hide profits. I found records of consulting fees paid to city officials who conveniently rezoned land for Vance developments. I uncovered the internal cost-cutting reports that detailed the use of shoddy, substandard materials in the luxury condos he sold for millions. Faulty wiring, cheap Chinese drywall that off-gas toxins, plumbing that was one hard winter away from bursting. And I found the eviction files, the cold, clinical documentation of how Vance Properties used legal loopholes, intimidation, and outright fraud to force low-income tenants, mostly elderly and immigrant families, out of rent-controlled buildings so he could demolish them and build high-rises for the ultra-rich. He didn't just break buildings, he broke lives, and he profited from the rubble. My revenge would not be a knife in the dark or a screaming match in the boardroom. That was his language. Mine would be quieter, more elegant, a systemic collapse, a death by 1,000 digital cuts. My first target was my brother, Derek. His vice was not Scotch, but insider trading. He was arrogant,
using his own office computer to make illegal trades based on non-public information about upcoming Vance developments. He was convinced he was a financial genius, too clever to be caught. I began steadily. I wrote a simple, undetectable keylogger program and installed it on his machine during one of his long, liquid lunches. It recorded every keystroke, every password, every trade. For months, I compiled a dossier: dates, times, stock symbols, amounts. It was a mountain of evidence, a smoking gun that could send him to federal prison for a decade. But I didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. I let the evidence grow. A tumor he was unaware of. My second target was the company's CFO, a man named Robert Walsh with the moist handshake of a born sycophant. He saw me as a piece of office furniture, a decorative plant. He was my father's right hand and the financial sleight of hand, the architect of the shell companies. I discovered he had a hobby. He was embezzling money. He was siphoning millions from the company through a complex web of fake invoices from a phantom contractor called Apex Builders. I didn't expose him. That would have been too direct, too crude. Instead, I became his silent partner. I hacked into the bank account for Apex Builders, a shell within a shell. With a few lines of code, I subtly altered the automated routing. Now, a small percentage of every embezzled dollar, a 2% handling fee, was silently diverted untraceably into a numbered account I had set up in Switzerland. I was stealing from the thief, funding my own private war with my father's own stolen money. The irony was a dark, private joke that kept me warm on the loneliest of nights. For 2 years, I worked in the shadows. I was a phantom in the Vance empire, a dutiful daughter by day, a digital revolutionary by night. I built a fortress of evidence: emails, financial records, scanned documents, even audio files I managed to capture from my father's office using a bug disguised as a USB charger. I heard him casually discussing bribes, witness intimidation, environmental violations. Every piece was encrypted, time-stamped, and stored in multiple secure locations across the globe, set to be released upon a single, irreversible command. The final, horrifying piece of the puzzle was my father's magnum opus, his legacy project, the Apex Tower. A shimmering 90-story skyscraper on the Hudson, a billion-dollar monument to his own ego. It was also a death trap. The building's state-of-the-art fire suppression system was a cheap, imported knockoff. The pipes were substandard, the pressure gauges falsified, the chemical retardant diluted. My father had bribed the safety inspectors and buried the real reports. In the event of a real fire, the system would fail, catastrophically. Hundreds could die. I had the invoices, the falsified safety certificates, the internal memos warning of the risk that were marked ignored. This wasn't just corruption. It was premeditated mass murder for profit. The weapon was forged. The target was in sight. I was ready.
I chose my father's 65th birthday gala for the unveiling. The event was the social spectacle of the season, held in the glittering, unfinished atrium of the Apex Tower itself. It was a blatant power move, a celebration of his triumph over the skyline. The who's who of New York were there: politicians, celebrities, rival CEOs, every major news outlet. My father stood at the podium, beaming under the spotlights, the very picture of self-made success.
I stood at the back of the crowd, wearing a simple, elegant black dress, a ghost at my own feast. My father began his speech, his voice booming through the sound system. They said it couldn't be done. They said the Apex Tower was too ambitious, too bold. But Vance never backs down from a challenge. We don't just build buildings, we build legends. I pulled out my phone. It wasn't a standard model. It was a custom-built device, sleek and black, with a single glowing red button on the screen. My thumb hovered over it. My heart was not pounding. It was steady, a calm, cold engine. This was the point of no return. There would be no going back. The empire would fall, and with it, the last vestiges of my old life. I thought of the 12-year-old girl with the bleeding lip. I thought of the 22-year-old in the hospital, betrayed by the man who was supposed to protect her. The anger, once a cold ember, was now a supernova, burning away the last of my fear. I pressed the button. It began subtly. A low, confused murmur rippled through the black-tie crowd as smartphones began to buzz and chirp in unison. Then, the giant floor-to-ceiling LED screens flanking the podium, which had been displaying a slick video montage of the tower's construction, flickered and went black. A second later, they lit up again. Instead of "Happy Birthday, Charles Vance," they now showed a digital slideshow of damning evidence. The first image was a crystal-clear scan of Derek's insider trading logs, blown up to monumental proportions for everyone to see. Dates, stock symbols, amounts in the millions. A collective sharp gasp went up from the audience. I saw Derek standing near the front, his face drained of all color, a glass of champagne frozen halfway to his lips. The screen changed. Now it displayed a series of wire transfers from Robert Walsh's embezzlement scheme, his personal digital signature clearly visible on the authorization forms. The man himself made a choked sound and took a stumbling step backward, knocking over a woman beside him. Then came the audio. My father's voice, crisp, cold, and unmistakable, filled the cavernous atrium. "The Apex inspector is taken care of. Just transfer the 50 grand to his daughter's trust fund. He'll sign off on the Apex systems. And if he gets cold feet, remind him what happened to the last guy who tried to cross me." The crowd erupted into a panicked uproar. Reporters were scrambling, shouting questions, their cameras flashing like a thunderstorm. My father stood frozen at the podium, his mouth agape, his face a grotesque mask of shock and dawning apocalyptic fury. He looked out at the chaos, his empire crumbling in real time before his eyes. I walked calmly through the chaos, a still point in the turning world. I moved toward the podium, my heels clicking softly on the polished concrete. I took the spare microphone from the hands of the stunned event coordinator, who was too shocked to protest. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm and clear, echoing through the suddenly, eerily silent atrium. The crowd turned to me, a sea of bewildered, horrified faces. "I am not Hannah, Mega, or Kayleigh. My name is Elena Vance. What you are seeing and hearing is the true legacy of Charles Vance. An empire built on lies, corruption, insider trading, embezzlement, and a complete and utter disregard for human life." I turned and pointed to the main screen. "And this is the crown jewel of that legacy, the Apex Tower." With a tap on my phone, I pulled up the schematics of the faulty fire system, the falsified safety reports, the internal warnings that had been ignored. This building, which my father is so proud of, is not a landmark. It is a coffin. The fire suppression system is a cheap, dangerous fake. He knew it, and he covered it up. putting the lives of every future tenant and worker at risk for the sake of a few extra million in profit. I looked directly at my father. His eyes met mine across the room. For the first time in my life, I saw not calculation, not anger, but pure, undiluted fear. He saw the weapon he had created. "You tried to break me, Father," I said, my voice dropping, but carrying with lethal clarity to every corner of the room. "You created me. You forged me in your own image of ruthlessness and cunning. The only difference is I have a conscience." On cue, the main doors to the atrium burst open. Federal agents in flak jackets, along with officers from the SEC and the NYPD, pushed their way through the crowd. They were holding printed copies of the evidence I had anonymously sent them weeks ago. I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening final thud. I didn't wait to see them cuff my father, my brother, or a weeping Robert Walsh. I didn't wait for the news vans or the financial fallout that would vaporize billions in wealth by morning. I turned my back on the ruin of my family and walked out of the atrium, through the gauntlet of screaming headlines and flashing cameras. A ghost, no more.